It's Monday, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday. Happy NBA Finals Day as the New York Knicks up 2-0 in this year's NBA Finals are home tonight at Madison Square Garden. And you know what? They might just close out at home here. We'll see. Maybe there's a parade later on this week in downtown Manhattan. We'll find out, but there's still a lot of basketball to be played here, folks. And again, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on the Jersey First TV Facebook, of course, also on our YouTube, and of course, all of our social media platforms. And again, I can't say it enough. Thank you to everybody once again as we are celebrating 6 years on the air here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. Again, June 1st of 2020. Started this in the middle of the pandemic. Not sure where it would go, but 6 years later, many awards later, and just much to celebrate about traffic later. Yes, folks, we're still here, raising hell every week on Jersey First TV. I can't say it enough. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And also, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First. And, of course, you can listen to it anywhere at any time, again, during these summer months, whether you're going for that morning or afternoon run, whether you're walking your dog. Who knows? Maybe you're doing grocery shopping, whatever it is. Make sure you check out Jersey First TV anywhere and everywhere. Folks, again, Jersey First TV leading the way here, as always, educating and advocating for the residents here in the great state of New Jersey. Nobody does it better, folks, than giving you the best analysis and commentary about what's going on in New Jersey politics and more. You can always rely on Jersey First TV and, of course, Real Talk, which airs every Monday. Of course, check your local listings for start times and availability. Folks, you want to stay tuned for final thoughts a little later. I have a lot to say about some of the usual bad people in New Jersey, whether it's in academia and journalism, activism, elected office, or government employees, you name it, folks. There's no shortage of bad people here in New Jersey. And when I think about bad people and people just really bad at their jobs, I think about Amy Torres, you all know her affectionately as the executive director of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. And I had the displeasure of running into her for the first time in person last week at U.S. Representative Rob Menendez's watch party at Hudson Hall in downtown Jersey City. I mean, let's be honest, if there's free food or liquor anywhere, you know Amy Torres is trying to mooch off anywhere she can. So it was nice to run into her and, well, a little bit more about why, quite frankly, folks, why you should really be upset that our tax dollars go to fund her horrible organization, the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. More on that a little bit later. And speaking about insufferable and just downright annoying, yes, folks, I can rely on Uncle Chucky style, Charles style, with yet another bad take today on an editorial about a candidate for the House of Representatives in the 12th Congressional District who should have been scrutinized a lot more during the process. And somehow now he thinks he wants to, pat himself on the back for doing so. No, Chucky, I'll have to do your job for you once again. More on that during final thoughts. And also, folks, we'll talk about certainly a very special comment about the importance of Men's National Mental Health Awareness Month, which I'm proud to celebrate during the month of June. That's at least something I can get behind during the month of June. More on that later during a special comment. But folks, I like to put over people, as they say. It's a pro wrestling term. When you got a guy, you want to put him over, and you want to sort of elevate him and really hype him up. I don't mind doing that for my friends. And recently, Brent Johnson, the distinguished politics reporter for NJ Advance Media, was honored in my neck of the woods, which, by the way, I don't know why I didn't get a phone call for a lunch or a dinner if you're up in my neck of the woods. But nevertheless, the great Brent Johnson was honored recently for the 2026 Public Service Award for Excellence in Public Affairs and their Journalism Award. And it was recently bestowed at St. Peter's University up here in Hudson County. So why not put over my friends and give them their flowers, because that's what, good people do. I'm happy to do that. And coincidentally, the recipient of this award is my guest this week. Yes, he probably wasn't expecting this. He's my good friend. And once again, the politics reporter for NJ Advance Media, a diehard Met fan and a suffering, New York sports fan like I am as well. Folks, he's my good buddy, Brent Johnson, back again here on Real Talk. Brent, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Fernando. Next time I'm in Hudson County, I have to remember to I'm not up there a lot, but when I am, I should let you know.
No, listen, man, again, flowers to you, brother. Congratulations. Nice award. again, for a guy with a gray head of hair like you and a nice beard, I'm just trying to catch up to you. I mean, I throw it out sometimes. I'm just trying to catch up with you. But good to see you, man.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Again, great reporting as always. And let's get right to it. It's June. I'm sure you got hopefully a few days of rest last week after what was, in some aspects, not the sexiest of primary seasons in New Jersey. Some uneventful primaries, some very interesting ones. And the results really, I think, are generating a lot of, as they say, clickbait and traffic for us to cover politics in New Jersey. So let's dive into some of these primary results last week. And let's go to some of the more interesting ones, at least for me, Brendan. I think of the 7th Congressional District where, a little bit of a crowded field, not like others, but it seemed like Rebecca Bennett, servicewoman, mom, came out when the dust settled in the 7th Congressional District in the Democrat primary. She'll be challenging the incumbent Tom Kean Jr., who still, even though he spoke to David Wallstein with the Jersey Globe about what's going on with him, we still haven't seen him physically or given, even a presser of what's going on with him. Rebecca Bennett's kind of following that, to some extent, the Mikey Sherrill playbook. Servicewoman, mom. I hope I don't have to see like 10 more commercials about flying a helicopter like we did last year. But Rebecca Bennett, kind of played the middle during the primary season. But I'm pretty sure that, like a lot of Democrats are in this climate, she might move a little further left in this race. It's kind of risky, right? In CD7, where Republicans still, registration-wise, outnumber Democrats, but that margin is shrinking.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the rate. Now, it was one of the primaries to watch because it was a 4-person Democratic primary. And she was always the favorite. So that when I talked to insiders about how they felt that race was going to turn out, everybody had pointed to Bennett. They call her Mini Mikey. That's kind of although I don't know if that's, some people may find that as a derogatory term, although those people who say it don't mean it that way. Yeah, she's following the model of, military service, mom, moderate Democrat in a relatively swing purple district. And now this is going to be one of the most closely watched general election races in these congressional midterms. It's a place where Democrats think they can pick up a seat as Republicans try to hold on to the House and the Senate. And Republicans really feel they need to win this in order to keep control of the House of Representatives. So it's going to be one to watch. And it's been a race that's already been making headlines because of what's been going on with Tom Kean and his 3-month absence from Congress. So there's all kinds of reasons to pay attention to this race. It already was, and now there's even more.
Is there a risk, though, Brent, you think that whether it's her operatives or even Democrats in New Jersey, maybe walking that fine line? Listen, I understand everyone's entitled to their privacy when it comes to the medical condition, and I hope that the representative is healing and will be back on his feet, hopefully as soon as possible. We'll be back in Washington voting on bills. We'll even be visible, right? But do Democrats run that risk of maybe walking that fine line of, kind of not invading his privacy? He's a public official. I mean, I think an absence should be justified or explained. He hasn't done that yet. Again, it's a district that still, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a little over 100,000 more registered Republicans
that's true.
Than Democrats. So a slight edge, but it seems like, Rebecca Bennett is kind of trying to catch that Democrat momentum of like, well, and let's just be frank about it. I don't like Trump. I don't like Republicans in the House. I don't like what they're doing in Washington. Affordability. But Brent, I mean, don't Democrats have to be careful in CD7 where at the end of the day, I mean, it's not the president or the Republican House or Senate that are responsible for like the highest property taxes in the country. That's the state legislature, not the federal one. The gas tax went up again. Now, again, that goes back to the days of Chris Christie, but incrementally it keeps going up. The tolls keep going up. I mean, taxes are going up in New Jersey. Again, it's almost like, listen, the vote blue no matter who crowd eats us up like hotcakes. But is there a risk that, the affordability line by Bennett isn't going to work in that district where, again, at the end of the day, it seems like, Democrats for a quarter century have made New Jersey much more unaffordable than anything President Trump could have done or anything, Republicans in the House and Senate could do.
It's definitely a trickier line when it comes to a congressional seat, unlike last year's legislative and gubernatorial races, because those state issues are at the forefront when you're running for governor and legislature. You're the ones who are in charge of the state budget. Federal elections are local, congressional or local elections, because you're voting for your local district. But it tends to be a much more national thing. And the tough line to walk in that district is that it's slightly more Republican, but it's still considered a swing district. And Donald Trump polls show may not be popular statewide across New Jersey, but you may have more local pockets of support. And either of those candidates can't go too far to the left or too far to the right. You have to be very careful about everything. And so it's not a foregone conclusion what's going to happen in this race on either side. There's a real Democrats feel they have the wind beneath their sails after what's gone on for the absence that Kane has had for the last 3 months. But Republicans have the voter registration advantage. They have the incumbency advantage, as Kane benefited from last time. 2 years ago, he won by 5 points, even though that was expected to be a closer race. These local elections are sometimes tough to gauge because it depends on turnout. It depends on mood. And we could, even 3 months from now, 4 months from now, when there's election day, there could be all kinds of different things. Trump could have a bump in his poll numbers. It could be dropped in his poll numbers. So you really do have to walk a tightrope in these close districts.
Yeah, listen, it's certainly a race to watch. As you said, obviously 2 years ago, Tom King defeated Sue Altman, more on her later, by a pretty convincing margin, which a lot of people thought that race was going to be like 2 or 3 points. It ended up being 5, as you mentioned. So a solid win for him. We'll see what happens, obviously, in the next few weeks. Obviously, it's the summer months. Not sure if the representative will make himself available to the public. We'll see what interviews he does, if any. We'll see if he debates. I mean, I think it's a good bet that my good friend David Wallstein and the New Jersey Globe will find a way to manage a debate coming up in the fall. They did last time 2 years ago, right? They did it remotely. I'm pretty sure it could happen again. And listen, again, I can be intellectually honest here. I mean, there are things to like about Rebecca Bennett. Again, to your point, servicewoman. She's a mom. I think she kind of, not brags, but takes pride in like driving a used car. Right? I think it's like something like a Honda Civic or something, Accord. From I think like when Barack Obama was president. I mean, that's how far back that car goes, right? So, and for the most part, Honda vehicles tend to be pretty reliable. So, not a surprise. And obviously, she's going to have a big fundraising advantage. I think Democrats look at that seat as one that is winnable in this climate. We'll see what happens, obviously, during these next few months, where again the representative has to make himself available, hopefully, and we'll see what she does with fundraising. Because one thing is getting through the primary, which was a crowded field, as you mentioned, but now she has to really articulate what she stands for. And here in New Jersey, yes, it's a relatively blue state, Brent, but again, I think it's a district where even if you're like the most dedicated Democrat and, the typical vote blue no matter who crowd, I don't think veering too far left and becoming like an AOC or an Ana Lilia Mejia, I mean, that might work in that district. I don't think that could work for Democrats in CD7. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, that is not the district I would expect in Ana Lilia Mejia or Adam Hamaway to do well in. Bennett is kind of the candidate that you'd expect to come out of that primary, a very centrist, good resume Democrat. It's tough in these. Really, as I said, these races tended to rely on national climate, but they all, the benefit incumbency does, as I said, benefits Kane. There's a lot to watch for in this race. It's not one I would want to predict right now. It's way too soon. I don't know if we'll be able to predict it a few months from now. It's definitely the most interesting race in the state, something that is tied to the national scene because it can help determine whether Republicans keep control of the House.
Absolutely. Moving nearby in CD9, bit of a tumultuous Republican primary there between Rosemary Pino and Tiffany Burris, as maybe a lot of people know, the wife of New York Giant legend Plaxico Burris, in a pretty close race. I think it came down like 2 or 3 points. Yep. I'm not sure exactly what it was called. But, again, someone like Rosemary Pino has come under some scrutiny, Brent, where she's donated to Democrats in the past. She has maybe not been the most conservative Republican running. And in a district where, again, Nellie Poe narrowly won that district in 24 by only, I think, a couple points. And I'll always argue that, if the national GOP maybe did a better job of even as so much donating just $1 million to that race, they could have flipped that seat. Again, the president, in winning re-election in 24, did really well in Passaic County, which is a big chunk of that congressional district. Obviously, times have changed. Democrats, to your point, have the wind to their back. But Nellie Poe isn't very inspiring. I mean, yeah, sure, she'll be performative and stand in front of Delaney Hall with other members of the House and whatever, just be seen there. But does someone like Rosemary Pino have any legitimate chance in unseating someone like Nellie Poe, who, again, yes, the president won that district 2 years ago, but Nellie Poe isn't exactly, sort of lighting it up, as they say, on the field here.
Yeah, this is one. This was one of the races I was hearing after Trump performed better in 2024 in New Jersey than was expected. How he came within 6 points, not 15. And this was the seat I heard. Well, they could really get NJ9. That this is the Republicans could pick up a seat here, and because Trump did much better with the voter demographic there than he ever had in the past. But that has shifted a bit. The same polls show the same voters aren't as supportive. This district didn't do as well for Chitterelli last year against Sherrill, but it's still something that Republicans feel they could have a shot at. Nellie Poe is one of their targets. It's not out of the question. There's also other seats that are across the state, down in District 2, where Jeff Van Drew is Republican. Democrats feel like maybe they could take a shot there, although I don't think that's going to be as easy. Van Drew is very well liked in that district. It tends to lean more Trump, more MAGA. But there's, I've even heard things, maybe Chris Smith isn't out of the realm for Democrats, or maybe Republicans have a better shot in other places. So it's a real, because it's the congressional midterms. These are the big races this year. What's going on in Congress is what everyone's going to pay attention to, and there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of volatility nationwide. The political mood changes 1 month, 1 week to the next. So you don't really know until you get close to election day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really topsy-turvy when it comes to the mood swings electorate when it comes to this cycle. Speaking about, and I would argue this, I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can make a case here that of all the 9 incumbent Democrats in New Jersey, though, Brent, I would argue that Herb Conway and CD3 could be a little vulnerable.
That is one I've heard too.
I hosted a debate between the Republican primary candidates a few weeks ago down there in Burlington County. They have a winner in that primary last week, former NYPD officer and Marine Michael McGuire, won pretty decisively in that primary. He'll challenge Herb Conway in that upcoming general election showdown. I mean, I would argue of all the incumbents in New Jersey, though, Brent, I mean, I would say that Herb Conway, who, again, I mean, it's, look no further than why New Jersey is unaffordable than Herb Conway's years in the legislature in Trenton.
Well, now, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's his first term. You're right. There is strength to the incumbent, of course, but I think there's a chance, especially if whether it's the NJGOP or the national, that looks at this race and says, listen, Herb Conway's a little vulnerable. Hasn't really been very active in the House. I can't think of a bill he's even introduced on the House floor. And, again, I think for someone like McGuire, who, let's be honest, I mean, has a lot of defects too. I mean, there's a likability issue that I've been told about by insiders down there in CD3. But I think Conway's not a sure win either in CD3 either.
Well, there are 3 things at play here. One is that the district used to be Republican. Tom MacArthur held the seat before, and John Runyon before Andy Kim won it in 2018. So it was once a Republican district. It's known as a district, including in the legislature. Burlington County's kind of gone back and forth between Republican and Democrats. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that could go red again. Number 2 is that the question is really, will Republicans put money into things? That was one of the questions the last cycle. Would Republicans get involved and feed more money into Jack Ciattarelli? They ultimately did, but the question is, do Republicans wade into a state that's been considered a blue state? Number 3, as you mentioned, Conway, your first term tends to be your most vulnerable. You have a record. You're not as an entrenched incumbent as others are. So your first election after winning a seat tends to be the most difficult for you. So there are a lot of factors in play that could put 3 in play. The same thing for Nellie Poe. Same idea, first term Democrat. The questions about whether Smith or Van Drew would be vulnerable are more the national mood if there really is an anti-Trump sentiment going into November. But, again, lots of question marks.
Folks, if you're just joining us live right now, it is 4:50 here on the East Coast, and my guest tonight is the award-winning politics reporter for NJ Advanced Media, Brent Johnson, joining us live here. Folks, drop a comment or a question there in the comment section. It takes 5 seconds. Like, comment, and share tonight's episode here of Real Talk on Jersey First TV. We'll get back to the other House races, but you mentioned something about raising money, and I think that's really a great way to segue into the other big primary race last week, Brent, and that was the U.S. Senate primary in the New Jersey Republican Party, a very crowded field and a surprise to many. I know we talked about this when we were on Joey Block's show. By the way, shout out to Joey Block, host of In the Middle on Fox Sports Radio, New Jersey. If you haven't checked that out, Brent Johnson and I were the guests last week. Great show by Joey Black. You want to check that out. And we talked about Justin Murphy, a guy who I did not expect to win that race. I had interviewed other candidates during this cycle. Obviously, Alex Zidane, former journalist at News 12 New Jersey, and a guy with, again, I mean, next to you, maybe the best head of hair on a guy I've seen in New Jersey, and a beard. I was surprised to see the performance by Alex coming in third. And Justin Murphy's a nice guy, attorney, serviceman, very conservative, certainly a guy with a pretty wholesome background. But, to your point about raising money, I mean, that's going to be the problem for someone like a Justin Murphy in New Jersey. We have Cory Booker, the senior U.S. senator here in New Jersey, with like over $20 million at hand already. And let's be honest. I mean, I'm sure he wants to save some of that for Iowa and New Hampshire because his eyes are on, running for president in 2028. But he has a race to win here. We'll see what happens. But I think that's the biggest problem for someone like a Justin Murphy, though, Brent, where any wealthy Republican or anybody who's wealthy in general and says, you know what, maybe I want to donate to the Republican candidate. It just seems like that's one of the biggest struggles that Republican candidates have, not just in this cycle, but just for years now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you look at the last two Senate elections were maybe a better chance for Republicans to pick up the seat. Remember, the last time a Republican has won a U.S. Senate seat in New Jersey was 1972, which is when David Bowie put out Ziggy Stardust. That's a
okay. I get it. You're the classic musician. You got all that information there. But we weren't even alive, man. I mean,
I know. Yeah, I know. So it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. But two cycles ago for the Senate, you had Bob Menendez was indicted the first time, and Bob Hugin had a huge war chest, and he came within 10 points of. Still couldn't break within 10 points of defeating Menendez. And then 2 years ago, Andy Kim was running for Menendez's seat, and Curtis Bashaw, another wealthy Republican, came within about 10 points. So there's still that 10-point difference. The question is what's going to bridge that 10 points for Republicans. And now you have a candidate like Cory Booker, who is a national figure, has national fundraising. Some people will joke that, he's too focused on New Hampshire or Iowa that he doesn't really care about this, and this is a sacrificial lamb race. But, maybe Republicans dig into the criticisms of Booker. And the question, though, really is money there. If the National Party wants to come in and put some money, that could help raise it here. Justin Murphy is not known to be Bob Hugin or Curtis Bashaw. He does not have those kind of funds. This has always been considered an uphill battle of a race. And the bigger issue for Republicans maybe he can help with some down ballot races if he runs a good campaign.
Fair point there. And again, and Brent, let's be intellectually honest. I mean, I know you'll be more careful than I will when I say this, but I look at someone like Cory Booker, and again, it's the vote blue no matter who crowd. They're just in love with him. And I mean, it's so performative with this guy. And I mean, I can't think of a single bill this guy's introduced on the Senate floor. A lot of his theatrics are performed, going back to whether it's the Kavanaugh hearings during the confirmation for the Supreme Court back in 2018, to that performative nonsense and theatrics on the Senate floor where you didn't eat or drink for however many days before this. I mean, Brent, it's mind-boggling to me how someone can just bring themselves to pull a lever, well, in this case, push a button on a screen for someone like Cory Booker, and how someone like Justin Murphy, who's a good, decent guy, again, we'll find out when his views are put on a platform and he has to campaign and whatever. It's just mind-boggling to me how, I mean, this is a guy that could very easily win by more than 10 points again, and it's a guy that is so performative, Brent. I mean, again, I get it. It's the conservative in me that's coming out. I'm trying to be objective about this, but I talk to so many people throughout New Jersey, and just like, I don't get it how Booker's our senator. I'm like, I can't either.
Well, I know there are Democrats who have definitely joked about him being performative in the background. And, he has developed a celebrity persona over the years, which is one thing that can really benefit you now in this 24-hour news culture where people often look to see what politicians are on television. He's very good at getting attention in that way, and he's seen as like a national Democrat. So even if he's gotten criticism, it's always been a numbers game though when it comes to the Senate in New Jersey. It's different from House or legislature or governor. Those tend to go back and forth more frequently. Senate we have more Democrats than Republicans, and if you have an election where those numbers hold out, It's just very difficult to bridge that gap for a statewide position. People don't tend to look at Senate as much as they do. The governor's race tends to be who's more an executive, who wants to lead the state. People tend to vote with party on when it comes to the Senate. So it's a more difficult gap for Republicans to bridge, regardless of who's running.
Brent, I don't want to be too presumptive, but I think it's fair to say that he's lying in his grave right now. And I think Woodrow Wilson can kind of rest easy knowing he'll probably be the only New Jersey ever elected to the presidency. Is that fair to say? Or is it too early?
It is a very tough jump to make. We've only had one make it to he's the only one that made it to the nomination too, meaning Woodrow Wilson. He's not even just won the White House. He's the only one. We've had people run before. Bill Bradley ran, Chris Christie ran.
Yeah.
Steve Forbes, who's from New Jersey, ran, but they never got to the nomination. It's a tough. Usually, it's just someone from here. It tends not to play as well in other parts of the country. New Jersey, there's an East Coast bias in either party. Trump is the one that broke that foundation. Really, the brash talking Northeasterner. He broke that cliche that someone can't rise from this part of the country. But yeah, it's just making the jump from New Jersey to the national stage seems to be very difficult to do. You can be a national player, as Booker's shown, as Christie has shown. Whether you get to be president, that's a tougher leap.
Absolutely. I mean, unless it's a ticket of you and me. I mean, I'm saying I don't know.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I could see someone being vice president or getting a cabinet position from this state. That's definitely not out of the realm of the question in either party. But yeah, president, that's Chris Christie probably had the strongest path at one point. We're still looking, there's a lot of question of whether he should have jumped in 2012 when Mitt Romney was the nominee.
Sure. Was
that his window? Because that people did seem like they were looking for a brash talking politician in the middle part of last decade. And it just happened to go to the businessman from New York and not the governor from New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a lifetime ago, right? Where,
14 years ago.
Where Chris Christie was viewed upon favorably in Republican circles. Not so much anymore now, 14 years later. Back to the House results from last week, and one that, I've talked about on this show with others, and certainly in the 12th Congressional District. You want to talk about a crowded field. That was almost like a WWE Royal Rumble. Like, it was that many people. It was like 12, I think, right? So it felt like, oh my goodness, when you watch that debate with the New Jersey Globe and all those candidates on stage, it literally looked like a battle royal, Brett. So obviously coming out, when the dust settled last week, Dr. Adam Hamway, who, I mean, I'm someone who, and I mentioned last week on Joey Block's show, and I'll say it again, there's still a lot of questions to be answered about this guy with a lot of questionable ties. His ground game really got going in the last 6 weeks where, 2 years ago, Tom Kean beat Sue Altman by 5 points. And when Representative Coleman decided to step down, I mean, obviously everybody and their mother decided to jump into that primary. Sue Altman was looked upon as the favorite there. She was working as, I believe, Senator Andy Kim's communications director or field director here in New Jersey. She had a lot of experience in activism, working as the executive director of the New Jersey Working Families Party. And a lot of people looked at her as the favorite. What happened to Sue Altman in the last 6 weeks?
That is certainly an interesting story because, yes, she ran against Tom Kean 2 years ago in a more swing district, lost by 5 points. And then this seat opened up out of nowhere. And the thought was, oh, well, this is a more left-leaning district. She'll have a much easier time. But with the fall of the county line, which is something that she fought to have disappear, it opened up the field for more candidates and made for a more even playing field. And without the county line, it allows for someone more of an outsider like Adam Hamway to come in and take over the party. One of the criticisms you heard from people who say the county line should have stayed was that the line used to weed out certain candidates and gave stronger candidates that the party could get behind, and you could prevent someone with money from coming in and taking over the party. That's something you saw here. I know some Democrats were leery of the direction the party took, being more left-leaning with going with Hamway, and that others felt they should have been more moderate. But again, it's a left-leaning district. He has a lot of fans in among the progressive left, and he's obviously endorsed by people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but he also has some baggage where people have questions about his associations in the past. And Altman, seemed to be, it went from everyone assumed she was the front runner to, in this new age of New Jersey politics, this lineless age, this progressive-leaning Democratic Party that she got left out.
And it's interesting because now she's lost 2 campaigns, and I think that's a bit of a stain now. I mean, I would argue that very much like Musab Ali in the 8th Congressional District, who ran for mayor last year in Jersey City, but decided to run against Rob Menendez in that House race. I think being a 2-time loser, I think that's a stench that's hard to kick, man. It's sort of like just, what do you think is going to be for the future for Sue Altman now? I mean, again, it's just like you don't want to be that perpetual candidate, that ongoing candidacy. Obviously, maybe not going back to work for Andy Kim seems to be in her future. Certainly not working again in activist circles. What are you hearing about the future for Sue Altman? Because I would argue that, again, I mean, she's very resourceful. She's a bright lady. I don't really care for her policy positions, but I mean, I think she's resourceful, but I think it might be time for her to step away from politics, or at least trying for elected office. So is that fair to say, man?
I don't expect her to go away, and she's very well respected among a lot of Democratic circles. She's she's had a lot of influence in state politics in the past. I don't expect her to go away. I don't know if there's another office she could run for. I don't know if the state legislature's in her view. I don't know if there will be another congressional seat to open up. If whoever wins the 7th, whether it be Kaine or Bennett, I feel like that's going to stay that way for a little bit, where you could see a rematch down there. And then the only thing I could possibly see is because there's no county line, and because he would be a one-term, could be going in if there's one term. If Hamaway wins in November and then Democrats feel they have to run someone a little bit more to his right, maybe she could be, but I don't know about that.
It's interesting though, again, Brent, and I've talked about it on this show. I've talked about it on multiple final thoughts I've had. And, I'm hoping in the next few months, because there seems to be this, not outrage, I think, but there seems to be now suddenly an interest by some in Garden State media to really scrutinize Hamaway's record and his ties and his associations. And I would argue, I think that's part of the reason regular New Jerseyans lose faith in media, Brent. I mean, I think that there are people out there, and I'll talk about them later during Final Thoughts, but, there are just journalists out there that should have been doing their job and really scrutinizing this as much as they scrutinize Republicans for far lesser things. I mean, again, when you think about Hamaway, you think about his past, again, he's running against Greg Mealy, nice guy. I interviewed him on the show earlier this year. He too is going to have trouble raising money. Again, I'm not saying this to be, mean to him, but that's just the reality for a lot of Republicans in New Jersey during this cycle, or any cycle for that matter. Do you think that maybe Hamaway will face more scrutiny during the summer and going into the fall by the press about his associations, and quite frankly, not really ever giving good answers about it?
Yeah, you're already starting to see that after he won. Fox News and other outlets that are on the right started doing more pieces about how did this get through? How did this not get more scrutinized? I even had some Democrats be like, maybe this wasn't the right direction to take. He is saying that this is a smear campaign, and that he is an upstanding person, and that he has a great resume and will be a great member of Congress. But I do think this is in the way the media, and it's partially, there's not as many reporters, there's not as many media outlets. It's hard to get everything assigned. And, we wrote a story on the race and on his, and I put it in my newsletter about his ties and his reaction to it. It's just difficult to get. And then, you'll also hear some people say, well, this is the direction that the Democratic Party has decided to take. They want to be more progressive. They want to be more pro-Palestinian. And you saw it in the Mejia race in the 11th that, there's certainly an environment where a progressive left-leaning candidate can win in this state, especially in congressional elections. Yeah. And Hamaway proved that in the 12th as well.
No, certainly. Let's move on to the governor. A very challenging first few months for the governor. And folks, if you're not familiar, obviously Brent Johnson heads up the Mikey's World newsletter, correct? Okay, so you can definitely check that out along with his other great newsletter that he does. And again, if you don't follow Brent Johnson, folks, on X, or obviously if you don't check out his column regularly on NJ Advanced Media, what are you waiting for? Subscribe today and make sure you do that and follow him. Challenging few months here for the governor, Brent. Obviously, it's June, and we're about 22 days away from state law requiring that the legislature ratify and pass a budget that has to get to her desk before 11:59 p.m. on June 30th. Otherwise, at 12:01 a.m. on July 1st, the state will experience a shutdown. So, I mean, obviously, that's always the drama in June, but there's a lot of drama for the governor right now in June, whether it's the budget, whether it's the World Cup begins later this week, the potential disaster of what's coming potentially with New Jersey Transit, the optics about Delaney Hall in Newark. Obviously, her coming out with the news of allocating more money to help illegals in New Jersey. It's a busy month for the governor, Brent, but is the honeymoon period over for Mikey's show right now from people you talk to?
Yeah, that is definitely a sentiment and among the Democratic insiders I talk to, not just Republicans. That, yeah, she had 4 months. Her early poll numbers are very good, and she just saw her first crisis with Delaney Hall. She has the budget coming up in the World Cup. These are big tests, trying times for the governor. Whether she's passing depends on who you talk to. There are many Democrats who support her and some who had an issue with how she involved the state police in Delaney Hall. Some Republicans initially gave her praise for how she handled the state police and then started to question how it unfolded and said that she was the one and her and Democrats lit the fire in the first place. So there's a lot of reactions all over the place with that. And same thing, the budget's going to be another test. This is where you put your money where your mouth is. This is where she says she has an affordability agenda and she wants to do this, this, and that. The budget is a literal financial document that shows how you're handling the state and your vision. So, I keep hearing the negotiations over the state budget are kind of slow so far, but the final few weeks will really be when it gets pounded. And she wanted to get it done early. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. She's also saying that if Democrats want to add any money to it, that they have to cut money from somewhere else. We'll see if that lasts. And then the big question mark is the Stay NJ property tax relief program for seniors, that anyone who's over 65 in New Jersey, pretty much if you make $500,000 or less, you get a property tax break. And she says the program's too expensive, too large. She wants to scale it back. But the problem is the main sponsor is State Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin, a Democrat, who that's his baby. I don't know if they meet in the middle. I heard negotiations are ongoing. But there's a lot of question marks when it comes to the budget.
It's interesting. I keep thinking about that visual back in February when she addressed the legislature for a preliminary budget address. And, you could see Scutari and Coughlin when she was taking little jabs at, to sort of paraphrase, these giveaways in the past, that's not going to fly anymore, so to speak. And you kind of saw like Scutari and Coughlin like look at each other like, did she just say that out loud? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, Now I know that Speaker Coughlin and Governor Sherrill did meet for dinner recently. Yeah. I'd love to be a fly on that wall during that dinner about what's being negotiated. But, it's interesting, Brent, because again, sometimes the math ain't mathin', as they say, where she wants to cut certain things, but she introduced a bigger budget number-wise than anything. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, she's making Phil Murphy look like FDR. I mean, again, and I'm no fan of Phil Murphy, but, just in the last few months, I mean, she's claiming she wants to cut certain things. But again, whether it's giving more money to help, create a legal fund to help illegals or anything else, it just seems like, again, the math ain't mathin'. When you talk to insiders in Trenton, especially Democrats, because obviously they control the legislature and even by bigger numbers now, especially with the assembly with her win last November, what are you hearing about Democrats? Are they just going to fall in line because the governor's going to say, well, this is what I want and you guys have to fall in line? Or do you think Scutari and Coughlin have any real power here?
That's a great question. This is usually the first year of a governorship is usually when the legislature pushes back the most. We saw a state government shutdown in John Corzine's first year. We saw the threat of a state government shutdown in Phil Murphy's first year, and that was a time when Democrats controlled everything. You tend to see legislators tend to think, well, my branch is important, and the governor can't do anything without legislative approval, so they're going to have to come through us. And they have views on what they think the budget should be, and the fact that Stay NJ is such a big sticking point, and Coughlin's the one in charge of the assembly, is going to be interesting. I have not heard any real fear of a government shutdown happening. I heard they'll probably figure out a way to compromise on these things. But, the clock is ticking. And I had one source tell me, don't ever count anything out in Trenton. You never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And again, speaking about the budget, I mean, certainly, Brent, whether it's a school funding formula, whether it's property taxes, what are you hearing from insiders in Trenton about? Is that even going to be really addressed in this budget? Or is it just sort of like the typical bloviating we hear during budget season?
Well, the school funding formula is a very huge topic right now. You have districts who feel they've been shorted, and have to make cuts, and they'd like more money from the state. The formula, according to its sponsors, was designed that everyone would get, there would be a formula to make sure everyone got their fair share, and that some people will go up and some people will go down when it comes to aid. But it's a major topic. You hear Republicans and Democrats saying maybe we should put more money into it. And they definitely, most people agree, including Cheryl, that the formula has to change, that this shouldn't be the final version of it. The question is when that was going to happen. I hear that's probably an after budget thing, that they're probably going to have to work on that in the coming months. So it wouldn't directly affect this coming school year. But, Vin Gopal, the state senator, the Democratic state senator who runs the Senate Education Committee, say that this is a priority in getting it changed to something he wants to get done sooner than later.
Definitely. Back to Delaney Hall real quick. I mean, the optics have been bad for a while, Brent. We've seen people there protesting since last year. And again, just to remind everybody at home, I mean, again, Delaney Hall originally started as a rehab facility for quite some time. It transitioned into a detention center to house illegals going back to 2011 when Barack Obama was president. And obviously it's been used since then. And certainly, Brent, I mean, again, man, it's a bad optic where, listen, you can feel how you feel about ICE. And obviously it's a climate where House candidates, especially with the Democrat Party, are running on slogans like abolish ICE, which doesn't seem pragmatic when you think about the process it would take to do that. But an optic here in New Jersey, though, Brent, especially for the governor, where I mean, we're seeing protesters just feel emboldened to block the entry of vehicles or the exit of vehicles, to even now harass, never mind ICE employees, employees that work at the detention center on the way out. We see car windshields getting cracked. We're seeing people get arrested. Obviously, a lot of people out of town. Not all New Jersey residents are protesting here. And it seems like maybe the governor could have done a better job in getting the state police in here sooner, where ICE agents were getting overwhelmed by some of these protesters. It's like, Brent, listen, again, you're a dad, and I can see you're going to be a good dad. You have a good value system. You're going to raise your kids very well with good moral codes and everything. What does it say about, I just think the fact that people just feel so emboldened here? Like, where do we go wrong where we just think we can just go up to law enforcement? And I get that maybe politically you don't agree with the methodology of the Trump administration when it comes to immigration, but my goodness, like, where have we gone though, man? Where, I mean, parents are raising kids, or I don't know what's going on, where people feel emboldened to get in the face of law enforcement and think that there aren't going to be consequences. And we saw that with U.S. Senator Andy Kim, which I thought was performative, I think, in my opinion. But we're seeing people do this, Brent. I mean, it's a bad optic, and maybe the state police should have been called in sooner. I mean, I know I kind of mixed in a lot in there, but what are your thoughts, man, when you see this sort of behavior?
Well, it's a different political world we're in. Things are so tense. You'll hear the protesters and people on the left will say, well, we think the president's administration is a fascist one and deserves some sort of pushback. And that's their argument. On the other side, even Cheryl would say that some of these protesters went too far and that you can't attack police officers of any law enforcement of any stripe. Cheryl will say that ICE probably took it too far in the beginning and that she was trying to shut it down and it got out of control. But she's getting criticism on the left who think that she shouldn't have unleashed the state police because you couldn't control them. And then she's also getting criticism on the right from those who say she made the right call to put the state police in, but she's the one who started this by showing up on Memorial Day, and Democrats are grandstanding and have loose immigration policies. You can pick an argument. There's all kinds of arguments out there throwing around. But yeah, this is such a volatile time that it's hard to say what anybody thinks. That I think maybe people in the middle of the political spectrum probably feel overwhelmed now and don't know what to think. Because I don't think anybody believes that any human being who are above board should be treated poorly. But there's also the optics that there are also some in the middle who believe that immigration is something that needs to be there needs to be getting a hold on immigration. But, this is a tense, messy, not easy to describe topic. And I don't know if anybody would perfectly know how to handle the situation. It's messy.
No, it certainly is. And well said there. I mean, it's sort of a quagmire of multiple dynamics at play here. And speaking of which, obviously, which continues to make the month of June difficult for the governor. And of course, the World Cup, the world's game, football, as I like to refer to football, begins later this week. And obviously, I mean, never mind the host countries, obviously the United States and Mexico and Canada. We'll see how far they go in this tournament. But, all eyes are on New Jersey, obviously, as New Jersey will be having group play during the opening round. Certainly, they'll be hosting games during the Sweet 16 and, the round of 32, and then the Sweet 16, and then the final will be here in July. Yeah. We'll find out if the president decides to attend, just like he's attending tonight at Madison Square Garden. We'll see what happens there. But what a mess, man, we've seen with New Jersey Transit, and with, getting to the game, leaving the game. And I'll just sort of add this component because I years ago, I remember going with my parents to Spain and catching a Real Madrid game because I'm a Real Madrid fan. And, the way football is engineered abroad is very different here. Brent, again, when you go to, I'm not sure if you've ever been to Madrid, but when you take mass transit in Madrid and you take the subway, think of like when you're in Manhattan and you've been to Madison Square Garden and you come up through Penn Station and there's the Garden. Well, in the middle of Madrid, there's a stadium the size of MetLife. And so you take the subway and there's the stadium. There's, Estadio Bernabeu. And that's how I think a lot of Europeans, and especially in South Americans and Asians as well, have grown accustomed to watching football. That's not the case here. You can't walk to MetLife. You can't walk to the Hard Rock in Miami. You can't walk to Cowboy Stadium in Arlington, Texas. You can't walk to Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. I mean, you can't park. You can't tailgate. And I think a lot of out-of-towners, especially Europeans, are going to be in for a rude awakening culturally, because you can't just walk to MetLife if you're staying across the river in Manhattan, nor can you walk on Route 120 if you're in Kostad or in Secaucus. So does this potentially have a disaster written all over it for Governor Show, which, again, not really her fault. It's something she inherited from Governor Murphy, but does this spell disaster perhaps for her?
Yeah, this is one thing I'm writing about in this week's newsletter. I've been asking people, is New Jersey ready, or could there be some, trouble around the corner? One thing I heard today, someone brought up to me, a political insider, who said, well, if maybe this will be a disaster of having rideshare, like having all kinds of Uber, having big traffic and everyone's trying to get to the game, and Uber will be trouble, and because people don't seem to be buying train tickets or bus tickets as much as they thought they would. We all remember what happened during the Super Bowl in 2014 about how that was a mass transit disaster. I'm told the state is trying to take the steps to make sure this all doesn't happen. But yeah, MetLife Stadium is not these European soccer stadiums, football stadiums. And it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, especially in a country where you could argue most of the people going to the games, the matches, are probably not going to be from New Jersey. They're probably going to be from out of state. So they may be in for a rude awakening getting to MetLife Stadium. I know as a Giants fan, it's not the easiest thing to get to go to an NFL game at MetLife Stadium. So imagine taking the world's largest sporting event and putting it in the middle there. So it's going to be interesting, for a lack of a better term, in the coming weeks.
And just to add one more, maybe you've forgotten it. I mean, again, I don't expect you to remember this, but 2019, the last one-day WrestleMania,
yes,
was on Sunday, and I remember I was there. It was the last one that was like 9 hours long. And I remember getting there a little after 3 o'clock, tailgating with my buddies at WrestleMania 35. And whether it was a lack of communication between World Wrestling Entertainment and the Murphy administration or New Jersey Transit, they weren't on the same schedule Sunday night when it ended Monday morning at 12:35 a.m. And people were going towards the train stop, and there was no train coming. And there was a bottleneck. Now, I drove there with a bunch of buddies. We tailgated, whatever. But I remember leaving the parking lot and seeing this bottleneck of people congregate around the train stop. And then the next morning, if everybody remembers, you can just simply do a Google search, and people were stranded there. Like, trains weren't running. People thought the train was going to run, and they kind of thought like, oh, well, it runs during Sundays during the NFL. Yeah, that's a special agreement, I think, or at least that's understood. And we saw that in real time. I mean, I know you're right about what you just mentioned. What are you hearing from people maybe you talked to with New Jersey Transit? I know obviously there's a bus terminal there that got built for the World Cup specifically to get people from Penn Station in New York across the river as quickly and efficiently as possible. No tailgating, no parking. I mean, it just seems like there's something missing because, again, Giants and Jet games, 50,000 plus, spaces there for cars. I mean, that's revenue that the Mara family and Woody Johnson, the owners of the Giants and Jets respectively, are losing, I'm assuming, during this World Cup. But what are you hearing about New Jersey Transit and any concerns they have with days to go?
Yeah, this is a big unknown about how this is going to run. There are concerns about how few tickets they've sold so far because the state's going to have to make up that money if they don't sell all those tickets. And yeah, everyone keeps thinking back to what happened at the Super Bowl and WrestleMania, and the NJ Trans will argue that they've handled other big events, Taylor Swift concerts, Bruce Springsteen concerts. But this is a big test for an NJ Transit, an agency that doesn't always get the highest marks. So I think a little number of people are kind of holding their breath going into Saturday.
Absolutely. Switching to journalism real quick, Brent, folks. Again, if you're just joining us live, it is 5:20 here on the East Coast. We'll be wrapping up shortly here with the award-winning politics reporter from NJ Advance Media, Brent Johnson here, joining us live on Real Talk. Brent, obviously in the news cycle, Montclair State University apparently will be taking over for NJPBS. We'll find out what happens there with the School of Communications and Media there. Really progressive university. I tend to call it woke state at Montclair. Interesting. I'm a little concerned here about trying to take over public television. What are you hearing from people? And while, yes, it's nice to see NJPBS maybe not go completely extinct, but what are you hearing about any concerns, whether it's a conflict of interest or whether or not Montclair State can really pull this off?
I've heard a few things behind the scenes. One, that there were two bids to put in for this. One was Montclair State, and the other was a consortium of all kinds of people led by some former NJPBS employees. And that the fear is that NJPBS may see job losses because of this, and that whether Montclair State's operation will be independent from the governor because the governor appoints members of the board there. A lot of question marks, and the people who support it say Montclair has a high-end studio, and the other question is, will they have enough journalists compared to what NJPBS had? Is this going to be the most robust organization? It still needs approval from the state legislature, so it's not a done deal yet. I know there's a lot of talk behind the scenes about whether this is the right move. But again, Montclair State and the state officials say this is going to keep NJPBS running. It'll provide public television. That's really the end game here, that people will not lose a public television option here.
Brent, again, you're one of the best journalists out there. I no problem giving you flowers, as I do regularly. Can't say the same for a lot of colleagues in our field. I'm very critical of them. But here in New Jersey, though, Brent, I think even nationally, too, I mean, we're seeing the decline of what we know as regular media, right? I mean, again, I'm a guy, and I think I'm a little older than you are, but, I grew up reading the paper. I'm the typical guy. I read the sports page first, work my way towards the editorial, work towards with the front. But, I love reading newspapers. I read the digital ones, obviously, now. But with the rise of patches and tap-intos and, local news sites, for example, here in Hudson County, we saw the closing of the Jersey Journal. And for anyone that knows, up here in Hudson County, the Jersey Journal was the preeminent, paper site and then news site for over 120 years. That closed down. We saw the paper edition of the Star Ledger close down, the Bergen Record closed down. Where do you see the future of media right now in journalism? Because again, some people don't like calling me a journalist. I am. Live with it, deal with it. I don't know what to tell you. But whether it's podcasts like mine or the smaller news sites that are covering municipalities, board of ed races, which is just as important, council races, county commissioner races. Where do you see here in New Jersey, though, the future of journalism? Because again, sort of like the big dogs that we've known for decades have kind of been, declawed a little bit. And we're seeing the rise, whether it's podcasts like me or others, that are really growing in popularity because people tend to sort of maybe gravitate to that.
Yeah, I think we just have to accept that it's a new world order when it comes to media. I started in this business 20 years ago. I started as a sports intern at the Star Ledger in the summer of 2006. And back then, we wrote stories for a newspaper. I was covering Rutgers sports at that time. I would go to a football game and I'd write a sidebar or a game story and file a notebook, and that was it for the day. And then it would go online later. That's changed. People get their media and their news from all sorts of sources, podcasts, TikTok videos. And I appear on these shows because they're a way to discuss information and a way to disseminate news. And I have a TikTok feed that I do TikToks on because you have to meet people where they are. You never know where people are getting their information now. There's not a shared culture of everyone sits down with the newspaper or the evening news every night. So you have to adapt, and you have to learn to reach people where they are. And do as good a work you can in as many different avenues and formats. And I just think, we're not going back to the old days. You have to roll with the tide of the new days.
Brent, do you ever worry, man? Because again, as you mentioned, a new world order and the evolution of journalism has been inevitable. Are you ever concerned, man? Because again, we look at big institutions like NJ.com, NJ Advanced Media, which have been staples for us. But like anything else, whether it's the business model, whether it's paywalls, and I'm always concerned about that because I think some sites have paywalls and quite frankly have no business doing that. We see whether or not it's a good business model. You've been doing this for over 20 years, as you mentioned. You started in 2006, covering sports from my alma mater down in New Brunswick. But same. And are you ever concerned that again, it's the extinction is there? That the possibility again that the meteor is coming, and that possibly maybe you or I at some point just become dinosaurs in this business. Is there ever that concern for you, bro?
There's a concern that things will continue to change and evolve, and that we may not know what the next form is. None of us knew that podcasts or TikTok, when 10 years ago, I couldn't foresee that there would be all different types of media outlets covering things in different ways, and people probably would get their news from all different kinds of sites and not the same place. I don't know what's next. I don't know if people working in radio in 1920 saw TV coming. So I think we always have to be on our toes. And the fear is that everybody goes into their silos and you don't get a true form of what actually is going on because you can choose the media you want to listen to and you're not getting the facts. But I do believe that there will always be people looking for truth, and that there will always be some form of checks and balances on all different types of media. At least I hope so. But I don't foresee a doomsday scenario, but I definitely don't foresee the status quo always staying the same.
No, well said there. Folks, another dynamic about Brent Johnson you may not know is that he is an exceptional musician and a singer for quite some time. And certainly I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with you about music knowledge whatsoever. I'm not going to do that. But I think we're about in the same age demographic, I would say, growing up with music and everything else. And I don't know about you, man. I listen to satellite radio all the time, but every so often I'll put on terrestrial radio, and I feel like my intelligence is insulted when I'm listening to classic rock and what's considered classic rock. And for someone like you who's a musician, and someone's telling me, Bon Jovi's classic rock or Poison is classic rock. Bro, I grew up in the 80s. I grew up watching the hair bands on MTV. Now I'm really showing my age. Cinderella, Rat, Twisted Sister. And to think that some of this music has become classic rock. You think of groups like Genesis and others, from Led Zeppelin to Black Sabbath to Metallica. It's hard to argue what's classic rock, what's pop rock, whatever. For your genre and what you've been doing for some years, tell our audience a little bit about what your band represents, and quite frankly, what's the genre you guys have really excelled in?
Yeah, we're an alt rock band. We some people like to joke that we would have done really well if we formed in the 90s. We're guitar, keyboards, drums, bass, songwriting based. So if you listen to our music, it's very song-based rock music, and it's tough because very few guitars are on top 40 radio now. For there isn't even the thing known as top 40 radio. If you put on pop stations now, guitars are few and far between. But all things are cyclical. I hear there's a 90s vogue coming back around. But yeah, it's amazing to think. I've even heard some people say we're getting to the point where now Nirvana and the Wallflowers and stuff like that is classic rock. And I'm 43. We'll be 43 in September. I was born in 1983. So if that's the case, then the other side of 40 is really scary.
Listen, when someone told me, the Gin Blossoms is classic rock, I almost wanted to strangle them.
I vividly remember when Hey Jealousy came out. So that would make me feel very old. But our band is the Clydes. If you want to check us out, we song-based alternative rock based in Jersey. We have making a new album right now, so we'll have one out later in the year.
You're a busy man. Brent, tonight is Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Obviously, the Knicks have taken over New York. After the finals are over, and you got to hope that up 2-0, the Knicks will close this out somehow and bring New York City its first championship in 53. You want to talk about New Jersey not electing a U.S. senator since the Ford administration? We're talking about the Ford administration since the last time the Knicks won a championship, right?
Yeah, 73.
But once the finals are over, it might be a really, really uneventful summer here. My Yankees, Aaron Judge with potentially a season-end injury. Listen, 4 weeks is not going to cure what's wrong with Aaron Judge. He's 34 years old. You're not going to get any younger now. The Yankees are what they are. They're a very overrated offensive team. Good pitching, but you're going to lose games 2-1 when you can't score. And on the other side, in the borough in Queens, I went. I think I might have. I'm not sure if I texted you about this, but I went to the Friday game of the Subway Series, and I'm a Yankee fan who's intellectually honest. I like Citi Field. It's a nice ballpark.
Yeah.
I love going to center field. It was much more family oriented. It was a much more enjoyable experience for me. I wasn't sure about the $30 cups.
Yeah.
Coke. I mean, holy shit, my goodness, wow.
Yeah.
But in any event, it's very different than going to Yankee Stadium where you go to the stands. You can take mass transit. You can take the 7 train, but if you drive there, you have no choice but to park for $50. But I mean, give me something to be positive about with our Yankees and Mets this summer, because once the Knicks are done, I mean, yeah, NFL training camp starts, but no one starts paying attention until September. Talk me off the ledge, man.
Well, the thought is that the American League isn't very strong across the board, so the Yankees have just as good a shot as anybody. Eventually, you will get Judge back, and you have a relatively, compared to the rest of the league, a strong team. So it's not out of the realm. The Mets, I'm just happy Bo Bichette is now hitting above 600 for his OPS. I don't know what the Mets bring. They're apparently only 5 games back of the last wild card spot, but you may as well be 5 miles back from, the boat leaving the dock. So I don't know. I miss Pete Alonso. He's up to 13 home runs in Baltimore. I would be nice to have him hitting behind Soto right now. But being a Mets fan is a life lesson continually. It's a choice, and a choice we need to learn from as humans. Unfortunately, my 5-year-old daughter, Everly, and my 2-year-old son, Carter, I'm raising them to be Mets fans. So maybe I'm teaching them about life, or maybe I'm setting them up for extreme disappointment. But let's focus on the Knicks. I had someone on FIN said yesterday, can you imagine this team losing again? I'd want to get through game 3, but this has been the most fun I've had as a sports fan since the 2015 World Series run by the Mets. Or the 2024 OMG Mets. But either way, this has been amazing. I love Jalen Brunson. I love Karl Anthony Towns, a Piscataway kid. So let's go Knicks, because this is fun. And for all of us who remember the 94 and 99 teams, this is even better right now.
Brent, it's interesting being at Citi Field. Obviously, for anyone that's been out there, for sports fans, they know that really next door, we're seeing almost the near construction of the new ballpark for the MLS team, the NYCFC team. And that ballpark looks beautiful. As we all know, Uncle Stevie won the bid with the New York State Gambling Commission that the largest Hard Rock will be built in North America right there near Citi Field. So you can make the argument by 2030, you don't have to go to Atlantic City. You don't have to go to Yonkers. You don't have to go to Queens. I mean, far out Queens and, out there resorts. You don't have to go to Pennsylvania. You can literally go to a Met game on Friday, check in, hit the pool on Saturday at the Hard Rock, eat a buffet, catch a concert on a Saturday, Sunday, watch the MLS team, and then check out Sunday. It's 40 minutes for me, at least, across the river. Is that the future right there in Queens, you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a new look. I mean, the joke for years that the area around Citi Field was nothing but chop shops and parking lots. So this is a new thing. And, the question is, what does it do to Atlantic City? I know there's been talk about allowing casinos in North Jersey, but maybe that whole industry is just changing and it's not going to be what it ever was. And for Mets fans, I know the whole joke is, for the past, we wish we had something like Wrigleyville or something you see outside of Fenway Park, or even the restaurants around Yankee Stadium. This is a new look for the Mets, and we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a different look.
Brent, again, we appreciate you joining us here. The newsletter, obviously, Mikey's World, not in addition to your own newsletter. I know you're writing about the World Cup coming up this week. What else can we look forward to in the newsletter coming up in the next few weeks?
Oh, there's going to be budget coverage in the next few weeks, because we have to have a budget by June 30th. So we'll see what happens with negotiations with Democrats. And then a lot to write about with these congressional midterms. You have the 7th district between Kane and Bennett. It's going to be a big race. Fallout from the 12th district, the Senate race, because, again, Senate's a big statewide election. So there's definitely, the New Jersey politics never disappoints us. There's always something to write about and read about.
Brent, you're a wealth of information. I really appreciate your time. And I appreciate the rapport we have, because you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to talk to anybody, but you make it a point to talk to journalists in every spectrum. And I'm really grateful to you because you do take the time. And I really always appreciate you sharing our episodes,
Yeah,
obviously
absolutely.
later on in the evening. And again, man, you're a wealth of information. You're a great musician. You're a great reporter.
Thank you.
Obviously, you're a great dad. I'm concerned about raising your kids to be Met fans.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too. My wife is also concerned about that.
sounds a little cruel, right?
We'll see. Maybe they'll wise up eventually. But but I appreciate you shedding light on topics and talking about politics because it's important to have conversation about what's going on in our state.
Well, folks, he's Brent Johnson, the award-winning politics reporter for NJ Advanced Media. You can check him out on Mikey's World, his newsletter, and his other newsletter as well. Make sure you follow him on X and check out all the great stuff he does for NJ Advanced Media. Brent, in advance, happy Father's Day to you, and thanks for joining us on Real Talk.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take it easy. Folks, good stuff there with Brent Johnson, the politics reporter for NJ Advanced Media. And certainly, again, if you don't subscribe to him on X, make sure you follow him. And of course, subscribe to his newsletters as he covers Governor Sherrill in Mikey's World and his own newsletter every single week. And again, check out the Clydes, great band here in New Jersey. If you haven't heard their tunes, just do a quick search. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. And again, we appreciate his time here on the program as he's always, again, insightful, entertaining, and always educational here on the program, folks. And that's what we bring you every week on this show, folks. We bring you the big guests about the big topics and, again, the big episodes. Nobody does it better than Real Talk with Jersey First TV. Again, many thanks to Brent Johnson from NJ Advanced Media for joining us this week here on Real Talk. Folks, as you know, it's time for final thoughts. And folks, I talk about it all the time here on the show. I mean, there is no shortage of bad actors here in New Jersey, whether it's in higher education, whether it's in activism, journalism, or lack thereof, and take your pick. As you can see, the collage behind me. The collage behind me gets updated regularly, and I might have to sort of increase a little bit more because there's just more and more bad actors here in New Jersey surfacing every week. But I've been consistent about the collage behind me there. And we've had atrocious journalists over the years that I've had no problem, and I've enjoyed cooking on this program, like Alan Steinberg and Tom Moran, or John Van Vliet, okay? Or beta males I really don't have any respect for, like Joe Amaditas from over there at Woke State at Montclair. Or activists in New Jersey, or just bad journalists again, folks. Lazy journalists, I talk about all the time. Or performative drama queens masquerading as elected officials, you know, like Ravi Bala and Katie Brennan, Phil Cohen, Joe Quintero. That insufferable bunch. But when I think about insufferable, folks, I think about someone in New Jersey activist circles that, quite frankly, rubs me the wrong way. And no, not because I'm a misogynist or I hate women. No, I love women. Okay? Preferably attractive women. But here in New Jersey, folks, some of the more performative, insufferable types are doing us a disservice. And quite frankly, what should piss you off more is the fact that they get our tax dollars. And when I think about paper pushing, apple picking, do nothing activists in New Jersey, you know who comes to mind? Yes, Miss Photogenic there, Amy Torrance. Now, affectionately, you may know her as the executive director of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, who I had never met until last week at U.S. Representative Ron Menendez's watch party at Hudson Hall in downtown Jersey City. Now, of course, if there's free food and free liquor, you know, Amy Torrance is going to not even hesitate to go mooch off of that. But interesting, though, of Amy Torres to come up and say hi. And by the way, Amy, nice of you to come up and say hi to me. I appreciate it. I'm sure you're not used to talking to men as attractive and handsome as me. I get it. You know, it must have been overwhelming for you. But you kept your poise, and I'm really, really impressed with that. Okay? For a lot of ladies, it can be an overwhelming experience. Okay? But I appreciate you coming up to me and introducing yourself. And quite frankly, you know, taking the time to do that. And I guess were you trying to catch me off guard or something? Were you trying to think I was going to walk away from you? No, it was interesting. I was actually talking to somebody else there at the watch party, of course, you made it a point to come up and say hi to me, which, I mean, I get it. I mean, I don't know how assertive you are when you go out. I'm not sure if you're married. I mean, I doubt it. But if you were, let's just say. But I don't know how assertive you are when you're at a bar. But if you see a good-looking man like myself, not sure how proactive you're going to be in going up to him. But I give you credit in coming up and saying hi. But Amy, what makes you really insufferable is, again, and let's not kid ourselves. I mean, she's there to try to suck up for donations and try to suck up for the sob stories that her organization conveys every day. As we all know, folks, and what's really a travesty in New Jersey is that our tax dollars go to fund this bullshit organization that does nothing but coddle illegals, okay? And try to sell you this sob story about illegal immigration and how fascistic times we're living in, and how oppressive our democracy is, and all that, all the bullshit that women like Amy Torres love to peddle. And we saw that last week at Delaney Hall, when her and all the other photogenic, activists at the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice were outside for, right? With their usual, and of course we saw it in the news feed the last few days, obviously a big update as we've learned that the Office of the Governor is deciding to increase funding for immigrant defense legal services. Folks, see, it's very misleading here because what they've done, what the governor's office has done, and very happily at the direction of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, is to beg for more money to help illegals. As if we don't spend enough money in New Jersey, folks, in the billions of dollars to coddle illegal immigrants. That's not enough for Amy Torres. Right? We have to get $20 million more to help with legal funds. Now, I get it, whether or not they're going to subcontract to other attorneys, right, that subscribe to the same sob story as the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, right? And we all know the types of attorneys that we're talking about here that I'm sure will have no problem milking New Jersey in billable hours. I mean, let me think of one. I don't know, maybe Carolina Cabello. Yeah, I'm sure she'll have no problem trying to bill the state of New Jersey for her law practice to coddle and help illegals. Okay? But check this out. Check out these activists here. And my goodness, I mean, folks, parental discretion is advised, as we're going to see some very unappealing and very unphotogenic women in our peripheral vision here. So just, again, brace yourselves. If you're eating, stop. You might get a little sick. I know I did.
Do you mind saying more for folks who are trying to understand what these forms look like?
I mean, babe, really, this one with the red top, can you pull up your pants here? No one needs to see esa panza tuya. Like, nobody needs to see that. Nobody. I don't need to see your gut hanging out of your jeans. Pull up your pants or get a top that covers that. Nobody needs to see that, folks. Nobody. Seriously. Well, let's hear this sob story.
Often, yes. So if ICE is trying to retaliate against folks, or just frankly trying to get people to stop complaining, they will put voluntary departure paperwork in front of them. It's happened to a lot of people we support, and then people think that they're going to be getting out shortly after that, and sometimes they'll spend months more in detention, all the while that private prison company like Core Civic and Geogroup are making a daily bed rate on these people who then spend several more months in detention after choosing to go back to after being bullied into going back to their countries by ICE officials.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Amor, espera un momentico. As you can see there, maybe a prerequisite of working with the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice is just not being photogenic. Okay? But it's not about being bullied, honey. Like, if you're here illegally and there's an order of deportation, you're going to get deported. So when people like this and Amy and everybody talk about a pathway, yeah, I want a pathway too. I want a pathway up the stairs, into a plane, y que te vaya. Like, that's my pathway that I'm for. Folks, nobody's getting bullied here. Okay? If you're here illegally and there's an order of deportation to have you removed, that's not being bullied. That's you being sent back to your homeland because you came here illegally. See, this is what pisses me off about women like this and Amy Torres and the rest of the insufferable, slim feminists over there at the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice and all these other activist organizations. It's just insufferable. And I know before you want to start with the little bullshit, oh, Fernando's a race traitor and Fernando's the son of immigrants. Folks, I am the son of immigrants, legal immigrants who came here and did it the right way. And what does it say to so many people that I know who came here legally and are seeing illegals getting healthcare, getting hotels in some cases, getting other amenities, while other legal immigrants came here and fought and scratched and clawed and worked their asses off? And they're seeing these illegals get everything? I'm sorry. That doesn't make us traitors. That makes us concerned because our tax laws are going to this. But no solo diga esta huevona, because I bet you anything, she's another paper-pushing, apple-picking, do-nothing, lazy woman like Amy Torres, who's just there for performative purposes. But let's continue.
First place. It is all for profit. And what they're doing to these people is torture for profit right now. And
well, we all know that's bullshit. Okay, it's a detention center. Okay, that's what it's been since 2011. Did Miss Photogenic over there have a problem when Barack Obama was using this same facility when he deported more people than any president in American history? Of course not. That will require esta huevona, along with Amy Torres, to have, wait a minute, it's a pesky four-syllable word. And I know that these women struggle with a lot of words, but they struggle with this one, integrity. They don't have any when they're talking about this, right? And again, and I talked about it with Brent Johnson earlier in the show, but who thinks it's a good idea to camp out in front of a detention center and not just harass via verbally or physically ICE agents, okay, but to stop them from either exiting or entering the facility, and furthermore, to harass either verbally or physically employees who work at the center. They're not even ICE agents. They're not even federal law enforcement that have been trained to deal with these type of miserable human beings. But not a word from people like this. No, they'd rather keep pontificating and bloviating about all this bullshit. Oh, about a victory, about all. Folks, this is all from their social media. Okay? And trying to tell you that, oh, well, does everyone get lawyers? And, well, it's enough funding. Nothing is ever going to make women like this happy. Okay? And you know that Amy Torres is part Latina because le encanta joder. Acuérdate, bro, la mujeres un día joden porque sí y otro día joden porque no. That's Latinas. That's what, well, that's women in general, but let's be honest. But that's specifically Latinas. So any Latina blood that Amy Torres has, she exemplifies it. Because you live to bitch and you bitch to live, Amy, as well as everybody else within your bullshit organization. Because nothing's ever going to be enough. No amount of tax dollars that come out of my pocket, because I work for my money, unlike you that just sits around and, you know, eating, because I saw you. Amy, no amount of black you're going to wear is going to hide how wide you've become. But the point is that it's infuriating for me to see my tax dollars going to bullshit causes like this. You should be angry too, and I know many of you are. You write to this show. You email me. You text me. You DM me all the time. Fern, thanks for standing up for this. Thanks for raising awareness. Why? You think anybody else in New Jersey media is talking about this? Of course not. You think Mickey Mouse journalists like David Cruz is talking about this? Of course not. You know, the guy's too busy stuffing it down on a hot dog. Oh, sure, he walked up to Delaney Hall. Oh, cool, he left his house. Ooh, you know, I'm sorry, David, if that doesn't get my dick hard as much as yours. Okay, if you can even see it. Okay, but this is the bullshit that a lot of people are upset with, and this is part of the reason why the 47th president got reelected, because they want to see dangerous illegals get removed from our country, folks. You look at the log there. We're not looking at shoplifters there. We're not looking at people jaywalking with parking tickets. We're talking about some seriously dangerous people there. Okay. Now, are there some people there that are not criminals or dangerous? Sure, but they're here illegally and there's a process to it. But don't say that to Amy Torres or Slim over here that we saw in front of Delaney Hall. No, they'd rather virtue signal. And furthermore, not one of them ever denounces horrible behavior of people harassing, whether physically or verbally, ICE agents. And at some point, whether it's ICE agents or the state police, folks, everyone has a threshold. Everyone has a breaking point. And we've seen that lately where somehow activists think that they are entitled to do and say whatever they want. No, folks, FA, FO, and we saw that last week at Delaney Hall. Yes, these are people openly threatening federal agents. These are people openly harassing detention center employees, damaging their vehicles, okay? Trying to dox employees. We've seen it. And sooner or later, there's a receipt for that. But do you think people like Amy Torres care about that? Do you think people like all these insufferable feminists and all these woke fools at the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice care about that? Of course not. You know what they care about? They care about el queso. They care about the turkey, the lettuce. Okay? That's all they care about. They care about filling their own pockets and making sure that when Amy Torres is at her house, working from home, like what else is new, and she's looking at her Uber Eats menu for the 5th time during the day, that she makes sure that debit card clears on her Grubhub account or her Uber Eats account. She doesn't care about keeping people safe. She doesn't. She'd rather virtue signal. Like, who are you kidding, Amy? I at least have the integrity to call your bullshit out as well as everybody else's. Because we all know establishment media isn't doing it. I mean, some are. Some are talking about what's going on in New Jersey. Again, case in point, my guest tonight, Brent Johnson, one of the best journalists out there, and he's writing about these things, and about how the optics are really disturbing. But other journalists would rather virtue signal and peddle the left-wing nonsense and the propaganda. Folks, you're not going to see that on this show. Okay? Well, but let's continue. Again, folks, these are federal agents looking to remove illegals and somehow, whether it's elected officials, whether it's activists, think it's okay, more the activists, and even some journalists, think it's okay to stand in front of vehicles and somehow obstruct their view and their passage. That's disgusting, folks. It's disgusting. And anybody, okay? And anybody defending this, anybody thinks it's wise to deputize people to stand in front of facilities and harass ICE agents or federal agents or any law enforcement of any kind, be either verbally or physically, if you think that's a good idea, folks, I got to tell you, you're a broken person. You have no moral code. You have no value system. You just believe in anarchy, and that's okay. And we've seen that from people being arrested who've come out of state into New Jersey. If you think that's okay, if you think it's okay to stand in front of a vehicle, to hit it, to kick it, to pound on it, folks, I don't know what to do for you. We clearly don't have the same value system. I have morals, I have integrity, I have some sort of values that believe in right and wrong. You don't. It's that simple. Like, there's no reason to be standing in front of vehicles. That's what a lot of these progressives and left-wing lunatics and all the woke fools struggle with. They'd rather virtue signal people like Amy Torres and others, like esa gordita con la panza esa que ya se le va a salir del pantalón. Honey, just pull up your pants, seriously. But these are the people that are okay with this behavior. These are the people that sign off on this. I think it's okay for this performative bullshit. The most toxic demographic in our political climate, folks, is the liberal white woman and the liberal white male, which tends to be beta, not very masculine. It kind of reminds me of like Isaac Jimenez. You ever heard of Isaac Jimenez, that little Cuban guy? He's like, 5'3", 102 pounds soaking wet. That's the type of men we have to deal with in this climate, folks. These little beta males, these keyboard courage warriors or whatever that, folks, let me tell you something about keyboard courage. I specifically went to Hudson Hall last week with fellow member of the Pinnacle, John Highness, the editor of the Hudson County View. Okay, because I like going to these watch parties to interact with people. I ran into easily 10 people who I made eye contact with who will talk a lot of shit online about Fernando Uribe, but won't even have, to say it to my face. Folks, I can't respect you. I don't respect you, and which is why I love cooking you. The usual types online, like Alex Trillo, little sweet boy there in Jersey City, or Hector Segura and Justin Rivera. Oh, yeah. Let's make fun of Fernando because he's single. He's not married. Yes, because marrying your cousin, Justin, and having ugly children with them, that's somehow a flex. It isn't. Or Hector, also marrying an ugly woman and having ugly children, somehow that's a flex. It isn't. Like, you need new material. Or others that want to take shots at me online, but won't dare say anything in a public place. See, I have no use for people like that. But these are the types, folks, that will go to Delaney Hall and around the country and then cry victimhood when they're being pushed out of the way, or in some cases being run over because they're being idiots. Folks, I can't respect people like that. I just can't. And if you can, then it clearly tells me your value system sucks. That's the easiest way to say it. But this is what we've seen, folks, for many, many months now. Look at these retards with masks and gas masks. Look at this retard right here. Folks, again, you get the picture. This is the behavior. This is what's tolerated and endorsed by bullshit organizations like the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, led by its executive director, La Flaca, and I mean that facetiously, of course, Amy Torres, who, by the way, again, honey, thanks for coming up to me. I know it took a lot to come up to a guy that looks like me, because I get it, you're probably not used to talking to a lot of good-looking men. I get it. You should be privileged. I don't give a lot of women that look like you the time of day. Okay, so you should really feel privileged. I mean, you're not the type of woman I would ever even engage in a conversation with. You're just not my type. Okay. Like, imagine being married to this and then bringing her home to your parents. Ay, Dios mío. Yikes. But folks, it's this sort of insufferable behavior that endorses this sort of anarchy and lawlessness. And unfortunately, our tax dollars pay for this and contribute to the funding and the infrastructure of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. Folks, we should be outraged. And during budget season, we should be writing to our legislators and saying, you know what? Our tax dollars shouldn't go to people like Amy Torres and this bullshit organization. So make some noise during this budget season and tell them how you feel. I know I have. I'll continue to. Speaking of insufferable, well, of course, yes, I think of Charles Style. And, Chucky, of course, in his latest op-ed, and, you can read it if you have a paywall, if you have access to the paywall. I get it for free, because who would pay for this bullshit from Chucky? Where somehow Chucky talks about New Jersey's primary system is still broken, but some Democrats contend. Well, of course, Chucky couldn't help himself in talking that somehow Fox News has their poster child. No, Chucky. Unlike you, I do some real work. And I've been raising questions for months about Adam Havlin, the winner of the Democrat primary in New Jersey's 12th congressional district. And can someone explain to me again, and I'll just look at my notes here. Again, looking at, ties here. So let me get this straight. So a guy who has ties to his BFF, remember the Blind Sheikh folks, Omar Abdel Rahman, who was a mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, right? Okay. Let's look at this. So essentially in CD12, Democrat voters elected as their primary candidate an Egyptian-born national to ultimately and perhaps become the next member of the House of Representatives. A guy who volunteered for our nonprofit who it was discovered to be a front for Al-Qaeda. Now, again, that information became publicly acknowledged in the 9/11 Commission report. You mean to tell me someone like Dr. Hamaway, who's a pretty smart guy, obviously, had no idea whatsoever that nonprofit he went to work for wasn't a front for Al-Qaeda? You're going to tell me, you're going to try to bullshit me and tell me that he didn't know? It's bullshit. Let's continue. Obviously, was a witness for the defense for Rahman during that trial for his participation in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Who thinks it's a good idea? Who thinks that's a good reflection on the value system, Chucky, that Hamaway was a character witness for Rahman? I don't know about you. I mean, I don't tend to make a decision to go be a character witness in a trial for a terrorist. But did Chucky ever write about that? Of course not, because Chucky and Huevon, and Chucky's lazy. He's certainly not photogenic, as you can see there. And I understand for Charles Style, at the tender age of 97, that I get it. Working at your age is a task now, but it's been a task forever. So you're just lazy. Folks, that's lazy booking, as they say, lazy writing, when you just think that any criticism of Hamaway is just bigoted or Islamophobic or somehow, oh, that's the typical Fox News playbook. No, it's not. These are legitimate questions, Chuck, right? Obviously, having close ties to Islamic terrorists who hope for the death of America, that should have been on your radar months ago. Or the fact that Linda Sarsour, an admitted jihadist and sympathizer for terrorists, was at Adam Hamaway's watch party last week. Not a mention, not a peep from you about the toxicity of Linda Sarsour. But no, Chucky would rather say, well, this is just Fox News's new media, target, or this is their new poster child for all of their jabs and vitriol. No, folks, it's legitimate questions that we have about Adam Hamaway. You want to know why people lose faith in media? You want to know why people lose faith in journalism? Because of assholes like Charles Style. You should have been writing about this for months, Chuck. No, not writing an article today, some bullshit editorial like you usually write, or other bullshit journalistic attempts that you have in what you call columns, which it's bullshit. You should have been writing about this for months. But no, whether it's your usual TDS tantrums online, whether it be on X, or when you appear on Mickey Mouse podcasts with Mickey Mouse journalists, we all know what we're talking about, right? You should have been raising the red flags about this months ago. You know who was? I was. I'm talking about this for quite some time now. Not because I'm bigoted or I'm Islamophobe. Folks, that's just lazy. Okay? I'm an academic. I'm very literal about language. I don't have some phobia about Muslims or anything else. Okay? So when I'm critical about jihadists like Linda Sarsour and why Adam Hamaway associates with jihadist sympathizers like Linda Sarsour, that doesn't make me an Islamophobe. It makes me a concerned American. And should Adam Hamaway get elected to the House of Representatives, I think there's a serious case to be made about whether or not he should get security clearance, especially with questions he has yet to answer conclusively about ties to terrorists. Chucky, I know it's past your bedtime. You're not watching this live. You'll watch the replay. And I know you're lazy at your age now, and you really don't want to do a lot of work. I get it. We all know you've been lazy forever. But these are serious questions about Adam Hamaway, Chuck. You should have been asking them a long time ago. Not pontificating, not bloviating like you like to do. No, from your nice little cozy house in Princeton. No, folks. The reason people lose faith in journalists and journalism is when you have propagandists masquerading as journalists, like Charles Style. Again, we're not the same. I'm actually doing work. He's just collecting a check. We're not the same. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment here before we close it out. And again, I talked about it last week. I'll talk about it again. As June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, this is something I could get behind during the month of June, not some other woke bullshit. I don't care about this stuff. This is actually something in June I can rally behind because it matters. Men's mental health is important. And I talked about it last week. I talked about it before. Very recently here in New Jersey, a nightlife icon, David Quisenbing, lost his life because of mental health. And if you weren't there at Bar A a couple of weeks ago, over 2,000 people filled that venue to pay their respects to David Quisenbing. Not just a great bartender, a great businessman, but a great human being. But somewhere along the line, David was struggling with mental health. Let's show support for people that experience what David is going through. Because I know I get it as men. We're taught to suck it up and not show our feelings and just be tough. And it's, hey, keep going because you're a man. We're human too. And if you've ever been in a dark place, if you've ever been depressed for whatever reason, folks, it's important to talk to someone. Talk to your family. Talk to your friends. Talk to a professional. And during the month of June, if you know anybody, male or female, again, there's only two genders. It's not like, wannabe men, or wannabe women, okay? If you know someone that's struggling, help them get help. They're not alone. Their life matters. And to everyone right now that's struggling watching this, your life matters. You need to stay here with us. Talk to family, talk to friends, talk to a professional. They'll help you get past your dark periods because we've all had them, folks. Whether it's getting through undergrad or grad school or finances or, your job, whatever the case may be. We love you. We want you here. Stay here with us. Please get the help you need. Let's do that. Let's rededicate ourselves in David's memory to make sure that we help everybody that's struggling with their mental health, especially men. Let's do that in David's honor, please. Okay, if you or someone you know is struggling, please. There are plenty of resources online. Seek them. Your life matters. Stay here with us. We love you. Always remind people of that. It doesn't cost anything to be a little nice. And I know, coming from me, that's probably a little bit of a paradox. But if I can be serious for a minute, folks, reach out to those that need help the most. So here during the month of June, I will continue raising awareness about men's mental health. Okay? Here during the month of June. See, this is something in June I can get behind. That's some other bullshit. This is important, at least to me. You or someone you love is struggling, please seek help. Your life matters. We want you here. We want you to stay here with us because we love you. And that's my special comment. Folks, that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank Brent Johnson, the award-winning politics reporter for NJ Advanced Media, joining us this week. And again, folks, if you haven't done so already, like, comment, and share tonight's episode. And of course, make sure that you follow us on Instagram, also on X, as well as like us on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and also subscribe to us on Spotify or SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Jersey First and all the great programming we bring you every single week. Of course, folks, leading the way here, always educating, navigating for the residents of the great state of New Jersey. It is Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of Real Talk premiere every Monday. Check your local listings, of course, for start times here on the Jersey First Television Network. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's Real Talk here, celebrating 6 years with Jersey First TV and, of course, with Fernando Uribe Media. Folks, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and the leader in trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks, the most handsome face that runs the place. That's right, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Let's go, Knicks. Let's win it. And let's get New York City that championship it's been missing since 1973. Let's go, Knicks. Folks, I'll see you next week here. Please party responsibly, and I'll see you next week here for the latest edition of Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Always remember, stay classy, everyone.